welcome to our first broadcast of the new year. I hope you all had a great Christmas break and are back in 2017 and all things are going well. So this term on broadcast, we've got a few topics that we want to bring to you. We're starting in January with our Leadership Development Month, and we'll be talking about leadership development tonight. And then we'll also talk about contextualization, and we'll talk about prophecy as the term goes on. And you can find all the details about the hangouts that we've got planned on the broadcast website, which is www.thebroadcastnetwork.org. Today is the first of two hangouts that we've got about leadership development. In 2 weeks' time, we'll be joined by Steve Tibbett, and he'll be bringing us some biblical and practical principles for developing leaders. Today, we've got a bit of a case study, and we're going to look at what that leadership development looks like on the ground. And it's a great privilege because we've got two people who I've known for a long time now, Dave and Emily Williams. They're part of the team up here at Christ Church Manchester. And over the last few years, they've really come through and taken on a lot of responsibility in the church. So we're going to be interviewing them about their story and about where they've come from, where they are now, and maybe where they're going as well. We're going to see what leadership development looks like from the perspective of those leaders who are growing into new responsibility. Also on the same call, we've got Colin Barron, and Colin's a guy who saw Dave and Emily and wanted to invest in them and give them this responsibility. So I'll be asking Colin some questions as well about what made him pick Dave and Emily for that, and what the journey's been like from his point of view, and what are some of the things he's done and why. So I'm going to start by bringing Dave and Emily onto the call now, and I will tell you just a little bit about them. So, yeah, Dave and Emily have been up here at Christ Church Manchester for probably 5 or 6 years now. They're a couple who lead the city side of CCM, which is in Fallowfield, a very studenty area of Manchester, and that has two congregations, so a morning and an evening congregation. And Dave and Emily, with a team, oversee those two congregations. They've also got two young children. That's Matilda, who's 3, and Max, who is 2 now, I believe. Did I get the ages right?
That's correct.
Awesome. And they're good friends of mine too. So could you give a wave and say hi to everyone, please, Dave and Emily?
Hi.
No, and I'll bring Colin on as well. And if you've watched broadcast before, you've probably seen Colin pop up from time to time. He heads up broadcast and is also the senior leader here at Christ Church Manchester. So, yeah, Colin's face should be appearing any second now. There we go. Can you give us a wave and say hello, Colin?
Oh, yeah.
Right. So as we go along this evening, we're going to start with half an hour where I pose a few questions to the people that we've got on the call. But as we're doing that, you might have some questions of your own, and you can ask them through this webinar software that we've got. So if you see where it says questions on your panel, just click that and type in whatever questions you've got. And then after a bit of time interviewing David, Emily and Colin with my own questions, then we'll go through the questions that have come in and we'll get a chance to answer the things that you'd like to know. So I'm going to put my first questions to Dave and Emily. So Dave, could you just tell us a bit about kind of your background, tell us just a very brief kind of early history of your life, and then kind of a few years ago, what were some of your dreams and hopes and ambitions for the future? So just kind of bring us up to speed on where you've come from.
Cool. My life, very briefly. Born in like Christian family, grew up actually in a New Frontiers church in King's Church Hastings. Classic, always had a faith kind of guy. Was a muppet throughout my teens to my early 20s, through university and that stuff. Had a bit of a kind of, well, very much a coming back to God and a really real discovery of grace just after I finished university. And then had a bizarre kind of turn of events where I went from very backslidden to being in a full-time ministry within about 6 months. So I ended up getting involved in kind of creative evangelism, so I played drums and telling people about Jesus, which brought me up as in a band that brought me up to Manchester to work with the Message Trust, who do a lot of that kind of thing. And so that's what I was doing for a few years, and kind of met Emily whilst I was doing that. So if you take me, yeah, I was in that band between the ages of 22 and 25, so I'm 28 now. So if you take me back to 5-6 years ago, I was probably thinking that was the next decade, plus of my life. I enjoyed it. It was great fun. People got to know Jesus. Playing music isn't awful either. It's quite nice. Combining music and ministry is a great way of making no money. But there we go. And so probably where I would have been at the time would have been, expecting to do that for a long time, and kind of dreams, aspirations. I came kind of back to Jesus together on a mission in Brighton, so the Leaders Conference. And in kind of the same week that happened, I felt God speaking to me about eldership, but I parked that quite comfortably, thinking. So in the back of my mind, I had that as I'll do life, and plenty of, maybe a couple of careers, and at some point there'll be, when I'm elder, thinking in my head, probably late 50s, 60s, I'll be involved in some church leadership in some way. I did let that slip to Paul Mann, the leader of King's Hastings at the time, who didn't comment too much. He had asked me and a few other people if we'd felt that kind of cool at any point, and I didn't quite notice his subtleties, but me and the other guy who did say, oh yeah, I've thought about that, suddenly had to start meeting him at 6 a.m. every Thursday for a Bible study of 1 and 2 Timothy and Titus, which I didn't see what was going on there, but that was cool. But in my head, church leadership and that kind of stuff was very much parked for a few decades.
That's great. Thanks, David. Emily, could you give us a similar kind of, just like brief background, tell us how you met Jesus, tell us the first story of your life up until probably about the point when you met Dave, let's say, and then we'll talk about you guys together. But what were some of your key moments? What were some of the dreams that you had at that point?
So I grew up pretty much in a Christian-ish home. I always went to church and youth group and all of that sort of stuff, in just a kind of little village church until I was kind of a teenager. Then I started going to a kind of Hillsong-esque church. What highlights? And then, so about, 8 years ago-ish, about 2010, I moved to London just on a whim, kind of as part of a gap year. And a few weeks, probably about 6 weeks into being in London, I just kind of felt God out of the blue tell me to move to Manchester. So luckily, Tom O'Toole was moving to Manchester. So yeah, we moved, didn't we, eventually, after Tom married Emma. And yeah, that was, I came to uni, started up a church plant with Tom, and that's where we got involved in CCM. And yeah, that was kind of cool. Up to that. Aspirations, I don't think I really particularly ever had any aspirations other than to probably get a degree at some point in life and just be obedient to what God was saying and hopefully make some disciples at some point in life. Yeah, that's about it. That's me.
That's great. Okay. So then one of the big moments for you both kind of early on after moving to Manchester was meeting each other and getting married. So coming from similar-ish places, but also kind of having different things that you've done and different things kind of ahead in your plans, and even being part of different churches at the time. What were some of the things when you guys first got married that you needed to bring together, and as you started dreaming together for the future, what was that like and how did that work for you?
Do you want to go? Okay. For step one was when we were engaged, when we met, we were in different churches, and just surrendering kind of our church future to God and seeking where He wanted us to be. And so I was very happy. I moved to Manchester, got involved in Christ Central Church. First church I've been to, went in, liked it, stayed. So when it came to just offering stuff over, I think I I'm going to admit I've been very proud in my head and thought I would never move church for a girl ever, and was shocked and appalled, probably at myself, when God really clearly called me, I guess, to join Emily in CCM. And I think it was very much a part of a bigger picture of God speaking, where we were called not just, well, there was a combined calling in the mix. And so at the time, when I was still playing this band, a lot of my bandmates had wives who had kind of sacrificed everything to empower, because it's a horrendous lifestyle really, where you're constantly on the road. And wives had moved with husbands to Manchester from Ireland, from Wales, and they'd sacrificed a lot, and I really felt God had challenged me, actually, whilst we were engaged, that it wouldn't be Emily sacrificing everything for me forever. Actually, I was going to have to get on board with one as a couple with her, and also with God's callings upon her as well. So that was kind of what was going on in the mix, and I think we just threw ourselves into church life, really, and just served whether it was needed, whether musically or hospitality or leading a small group. We didn't really have much greater plans aside from Emily wanted to make some disciples, I wanted to make some disciples. We were kind of at the church's disposal to do that, and God had said about it being together.
So, let me bring you in at this stage then, Colin. So we brought the story up to the point where Dave and Emily are married. They're both part of Christ Church Manchester, and quite quickly you saw potential in them. So a young couple, a guy who's in a ministry band drumming, a girl who's got a dream of making some disciples, was part of the church plan, but maybe kind of not loads of idea beyond that what they wanted to do. But you saw leadership potential there quickly. What were some of the things that you saw in Dave and Emily in those early days that made you think, yeah, this is a couple who I want to invest in and give some opportunity to?
Okay. Yeah, just a few things. First of all, there was zeal, real in wanting to get things done. So in Emily, who I knew before I knew Dave, really got stuck in straight away, joined CCM in terms of the welcome, in terms of organisation, just fundamentally just wanting to serve. So, and then Dave as well. So I saw a servant-heartedness and zeal. And then as they got married and started to run a small group, I realised that loads of people were cramming into their little terraced house. In fact, I think at one point you probably had 25 people, maybe even more, maybe pushing 30 when all the freshers came in. And I'm the sort of person that when I notice something, I'll ask people, what's making you go to Dave and Emily's? And I get consistently that we love it there. We like them as a couple. We like the hospitality. We like their zeal for God, and so to see such a crowd going into a home and actually wanting to be there. What sometimes small groups and discipleship groups, people are allocated to see people actually just really flocking in actually to the group. That was what really started to make me think, these two have really got it for church leadership. And so that was the start of me talking to some of my other leaders, but also to begin a conversation with Dave and Emily.
So at that point, this was a few years ago, could you just maybe share a bit about kind of where we were up to as a church at that point? What were some of the things going on with planting? And then what was the kind of way you brought Dave and Emily into a bit more responsibility?
Okay. Yeah, we'd already started a congregation, a site in Gorton. We'd started a second congregation site in Fallowfield with students, an evening congregation, 6:30, which is what Dave and Emily were serving in. And we'd then started a morning congregation in the same venue. And I'd asked a couple who actually had come to me and asked to be trained. They just got married as well, and they were going to move to Withington. And I said to that couple, actually, help us start the morning meeting, and I'll find someone else to actually run it while you're actually gathering a team to go to Withington. So effectively, as Dave and Emily were being trained, there was another couple who've now got 40, 50 people in a congregation as Withington. And so actually I had in my mind that there was an opportunity arising for David that they actually could gradually move into. So because I'd already got this couple running it, and I knew there was a year there, we had 1 or 2 elders around as well. Tim had started the evening meeting, was around as well. So there was quite a lot of support there. But actually there was when I say a vacancy, we were creating a new congregation that actually needed leadership.
So then there came the moment then when, like the couple that Colin mentioned, Andy and Elizabeth did move on to Withington, started the church there, and you guys, Dave and Emily, started to lead that morning congregation. So when it was kind of first put to you that you might do this, how did you feel? Did you feel ready? Were you scared? Were you excited? What were some of the feelings when you were first approached about this opportunity?
I don't know.
How did you feel?
I don't really know.
I think our attitude at the time was very much we wanted to serve the church in kind of whatever capacity was needed, and whether or not it was the kind of complete situation, it felt the way that it was pitched to us that there was a need. In hindsight, other people probably could have covered it, but yeah, so it felt that there was a need, and we were happy to step up and give that a go. I mean, at the time, when we knew once the people that were going to Withington were going out, most of the people that were left were kind of in our house group anyway, so it wasn't that wasn't too big a jump, and I got involved a little bit in the preaching in church at that point. Although I think I was asked, we asked it was just after I did the worst preach ever, so there's grace in the mix. But yeah, that's kind of my thoughts. Just it didn't seem like too crazy a jump people-wise. That was helpful, and we just wanted to help out where we thought there was a need. Anything else?
That's good. So this is, what was it, about 4 years ago that this happened, would you say? Is that about right?
We were asked about 4 years ago, and then, yeah, 3.5 years, in the September.
Okay.
We did that, yeah.
Yeah, and come over that time period, you've carried on leading it, you've taken on more leadership as well. And during that time, I know you've done a few things that will help equip you for the role that you have. So I know both of you at different times have done the Catalyst Leaders Training, for example. I think you've finished it, haven't you, Dave? And Emily, you're doing it at the moment. So could you talk about that, how it's helped you, and then other things that you've read or done or studied or whatever it may be that you feel have really helped equip you for what you're doing?
I'll begin. Okay. You get a second? Yeah. I think the main thing about what our experience at CCM gave us was just ample opportunity. Even I just guess the environment that we're in is lots of people literally doing as much as they want in church, or being invited to keep on stepping, and there's always stuff to step into. So we got loads of practical experience by just, I think our kind of brief for when we actually started running the congregation was we were sat down by someone who kind of a week before and just said, okay, so the way this is going to work is you'll run it for a bit, and then we'll kind of catch up at kind of reading week. And we're like, oh, okay. And so just get your hands in messy there, and then you kind of bring in is that training and knowledge from elsewhere. So Leadership Foundations was really helpful in both. I had a real kind of knowledge gap from the theology side, especially having never formally studied any before, so that was incredibly helpful. I think, and I've noticed this with lots of other people who we've then kind of been helping kind of come into leadership as well. You bring a lot just from your workplace, and the leadership you see there, you take on board. So I was working at the Message Trust throughout that time, so I was taking on a lot of stuff that I knew about prayer or organising teams, and especially because we're in creative ministry teams, not competing, and all building something together was really huge for me. I now see, so the couple that we work very closely with to run our site, the husband is a web developer, and he's constantly bringing in different aspects of his workplace as well. And I guess so it's kind of, you get knowledge from everywhere, but we had a format or a forum to apply it and actually get the muscle memory, if that makes sense.
Yeah. So how about you, Emily? What would you say are some of the highlights of the Catalyst leadership training, or any other things you want to bring in?
I think one of the biggest highlights is just getting to kind of mix with leaders from a real variety of churches. Like, they're not all even necessarily New Frontiers churches, which I think can be helpful sometimes, to just get other perspectives and just kind of different ways of doing things that you sometimes miss out on when we just kind of keep to the same kind of people. And I think that's one of the main things, and just the theology and kind of putting in some things that we missed out along the way.
That's good. So Colin, one of the things that that Dave was saying was about kind of being given an opportunity, and then kind of we'll catch up at this point, and the balance between plenty of chance to have a go and also as much support as possible. Could you make a few comments about that, and what are the things you try to go for in that area?
Yeah, I mean, I'm reasonably organic in the way I approach things, which I've noticed suits some people and is a challenge to others. So my philosophy, and Dave picked it up, is to try and give space, and then allow people to actually fill that space, and then try and train them as they're going. Now, what I notice is that some people need a track to run on. Some people. So we've got.
Colin, I think your mic has gone off. You've stopped making noise. Or David and Emily, can you hear Colin?
No.
Okay. Colin, I'm going to go back to a question to David and Emily, because your mic has gone and we can't hear you. Could you play around with that? I'll come back to you on this thought in a minute. But since you took this responsibility on 3 or 4 years ago, you've since also taken responsibility for the evening congregation. So Tim and Vicky, who were leading that, have moved on to plant another site, and you've now taken the lead on both CCM City congregations. And you've got 3 or 4 years of leadership experience under your belt now. Could you pick out, like, maybe if you could each pick out one real kind of joyful moment of those 3 or 4 years where you say, really enjoyed that, it was a highlight of it and made it all worthwhile for me. If we could get a couple of moments like that from you guys.
I think baptisms are usually a highlight. It's almost even more so when it's someone who you've had nothing to do with, and that's but you've just been part of this family, and you are encouraged to see that yeah, just that person brought in by another family member who's loved them and explained the gospel, or usually it's a group process. So I think that's usually a highlight for me. And for you?
Yeah, Emily.
I think just watching people like develop their home groups is quite exciting. Like kind of when people really have kind of got the vision and kind of are doing it really well, and people are kind of going into these home groups and feeling really welcome. And again, we've had nothing to do with that. That feels nice.
Yeah, no, that's good. That's like what Colin was saying. Kind of initially, he'd seen you guys then being replicated and reproduced in the different groups that you've got going on. Very good. Would you say there have been any challenges or things along the way that you'd want to kind of share and say, actually, this wasn't the easiest moment, but through it, God's done some great stuff, or you've learned some key lessons, or anything you want to share about harder times?
How long you got?
Not on the internet.
What do you think? I guess one of the maybe a tough thing maybe for me more personally was developing into a role that, as I kind of said before, I hadn't anticipated at that point in life, and you realise you don't quite, you're not aligned, and maybe your character's not where you want it to be. And also, I think probably what I found really tough was I think it takes a while for you to be able to operate really as yourself within kind of a wider team, and for the best of you to kind of come out. And I think we quite quickly got into our role, and the way that our kind of church runs a lot of out of your home. There's no church offices, and kind of seeing other leaders and stuff. And I think one of the tough things, we often only saw other leaders when there's a problem, and so I might have been stressed. And I think a lot of the time, just I think my character was not particularly being so much of a blessing to those people, shall I say. Sometimes, and I didn't feel, and it frustrated me because I knew I wasn't coming across the way I wanted to. That was probably quite if that makes sense. So, and I felt I could operate well in my work kind of setting, where I kind of had a deeper relationship developed over years with some people, and I was suddenly trying to lead a church with some people that I hadn't known for that long. So that was something that took a while, probably for me to sort out which points was me miscommunicating, which points was my selfishness and pride, and so that was probably a big thing to work through. How about that? Yeah.
Can we see if Colin is back on with the audio? Could you just try and talk, Colin, for a moment?
Yeah, I'm here.
It's great, we can hear you again. So obviously, Dave and Emily have done a good job because they're still here, they're still leading, and have been given more opportunities. So it's obviously gone pretty well. But Colin, what would you say, kind of over these 3 or 4 years of these guys leading, are some of the things that you'd commend them for? You'd say they've done well and kind of a good model for everyone else.
Well, they've had 2 kids. Emily's doing a social work degree or master's. Not quite sure which one it is. I forget. So they've actually grown a church to 130 people, 2 congregations. And that is fabulous in your mid-20s. And like a lot of people that are involved in what we're doing, they don't get a lot of money to do this. So to actually plant into either needy areas of what we're doing or studenty areas, and so the faith level that these guys have shown in terms of asking God for money, letting God provide. I mean, they just get paid a couple of days a week, but there's a genuine faith level in them, which is fantastic. And I've just seen them grow. So they're preaching, both of them. Emily and Dave's preaching has just grown as they've learned more. And actually, again, practice makes perfect sometimes, and just by giving the opportunity. So, I've been really just blessed just watching the growth. And also, Dave mentioned, figuring out how you work in a team when we don't have officers. Most people are part-time, so you're bumping into people a little bit sometimes in and out of meetings. So you have to learn grace, actually, to live in that sort of environment. So I've been really blessed, and the fruit of what we started in Starbucks, asking about, will you take this on, which was a small congregation actually in the morning then. It literally was probably 20 or 30 people at that point. We had about 60, 70 in the evening. But actually to grow it both, and so it's a new church now, I would think, Dave and Emily, isn't it? Since when we asked, most people have graduated, moved on often to some of our other church plants, actually. So there's a whole raft of new people. So, yeah.
So your answer there, Colin, actually leads nicely onto. There's just two more areas I just want some thoughts from you guys on, and then we'll go to the Q&A. There's quite a lot of questions coming in already. So if you do have questions, be typing them in, and we'll make sure we get to them. So Colin listed some of the things that you're doing. So your involvement in church, your 2 young kids, Emily's course, and so on. It's a lot that you guys have got going on in life. Can you talk a bit about how you make it work? So what are some of the things that you've learned to pace yourself, to manage your time, and to get all the things that you've got going, working to the best you
can?
You're the expert.
I don't really know. I'd like to say that we have a system, but we don't really. So I think kind of one of the biggest things is probably actually just being able to be flexible and kind of kind of allow space. So kind of one of the things, I can't remember who told us, somebody said kind of never book your diary more than 70% in a week, so that you kind of have a bit of wiggle room, which I think is kind of how we work. So kind of putting in all the vital things and then leaving space, because inevitably stuff always crops up, or we're tired, or we're ill, or children are ill. So that's kind of one of the good things. I think as well, just kind of, for me anyway, one of the big things is, kind of the whole let your yes be yes and your no be no thing. So kind of not saying yes to things unless we know that we can commit to them. And so, having to learn to turn stuff down and what to turn down, and You got anything to add?
I think just we see life quite holistically, and it's all God's, and we just think kingdom, kind of in everything. And kind of with that perspective, sometimes you're kind of okay with actually sacrificing maybe a bit more time with your kids when the church needs it, and then really backing away and investing in the kids at other times, or other people, or whatever. Just not kind of compartmentalising too much, just seeing it as one thing that kind of needs organising. Also, Emily's the incredibly organised one, and so she runs the diaries. So that's delegation, which is very helpful. So also, I think to a point, you're busy. You're really busy. We sleep less than some other people, probably a lot of other people, and you learn to operate when you're not quite so healthy during the busy periods or whatever. And then we
watch TV.
We also just don't watch TV. So we do a lot, and it takes lots of hours, and so we holiday hard when we can, and I think that's a big part of our rhythm. Just when you can, you holiday, chuck all your money at it, and rest well.
That's very important. Okay, the final one I'll ask you of mine, and then we'll bring some in from other people. One of the things that I've noticed and been impressed by about the leadership that you guys provide is you do so as a team. It's very much the two of you together that's leading. Can you talk a bit about that? How do you keep that as the way you do it, rather than it just gravitating towards one or the other of you? Is it a deliberate thing, or is it just how it works naturally for you? And yeah, just talk about that for us, if you would.
Me, I think from the start there was the calling that was quite clear, but actually, to be honest, figuring out that calling and realizing what it works like, it's actually probably been the hardest thing. But there's always been a clear understanding that that was the intent, and sometimes it feels like we're really ministering together, and to be honest, other times it feels like we're ministering alongside each other, which is different, and it's not what we're aiming for. So it's, to actually get togetherness has been it's been a struggle, something we've had to work towards. Operating out of the house a lot is very helpful in terms of hospitality is kind of a big thing we do. I think I don't know, just on one level, getting out of each other's way when you just need to let the other person do that thing and do it well, and knowing when you need to have two voices in the mix. And just, I think we both believe in each other, and so we keep on encouraging each other. And when one of us has a bit of a knockback or disappointment, just reaffirming, you are called to this, we are called to this, just encouraging each other in that way. What else? We're learning to public speak together. We've done one preach together so far. So.
Well, I'm going to come on to a few of these questions we've got. So keep them coming. If anything's occurring to you that you'd like to ask, keep typing them in. The first one I'm going to ask is actually a double-part question. And I think the first part's probably more for you guys, Emily and Dave. And the second part we'll put your way, Colin. It says, this is a great story of releasing people into leadership through planting out congregations. The first part of the question is, how have you guys actually released leaders yourselves within the congregations that you lead?
How have we released people ourselves to lead? So, like I said, the culture we're in is just, there's always space, and so I think what we kind of found within CCM is just everyone is growing, everyone's pushing themselves, and other people need to go with them. We have a congregation with just two congregations with a very high buy-in ethic anyway. So 80% probably plus people serve on teams anyway. 80% community group attendance. That means you need about 15% of your congregation just to be community group leaders. So they're leading in a way. We have core teams for each congregation. We have a high turnover, so we have to train about 5 new preachers a year, bring through about 3 worship leaders a year, just to exist because of the transient nature of where we are. And I'm only paid part-time. I'm just doing a full-time master's. I look after kids a couple of days a week as well. Kind of there's stuff to do, so I think we're constantly looking just to offload. I mean, for instance, in our morning congregation, the December preaching series and the January preaching series we've just had were written by a guy who's 47. Aside from Colin, he's my oldest member, and a couple of years ago he'd never preached before. I wanted some wisdom in the mix, asked him to preach. Suddenly he's coming out with all these ideas for a bunch of stuff, and so whilst I'm planning the kind of bread and butter bulk things, he's shooting at me a Christmas series, a January series. It looks great, so we take that on board. So we're in a culture where stuff needs to get done, and it's quite easy to then just invite people into that and to buy into that, I think.
Okay, and the second part of the question, and Colin, maybe you'd comment on this one. how do you create space within a church plant for people to lead when you have a lot of leaders in a small team?
Ah, difficult one. Probably start a second
Yeah,
pretty quickly.
I knew you'd say that.
No, I mean it. I mean that
Yeah.
effectively. I think people have a philosophy that they've got to get to like the magic 120 or the 70 before they can do anything else. And I think when I first came to Manchester, I had a load of leaders, and we had 30 people. A lot of them could lead, and then we started our second congregation just immediately. That was 20 years ago, and I think people think it's just reckless, but actually, it's growth. You give people opportunity, and if in that original core, if there's a lot of leaders, if it's right, you give them room to grow. As Dave and Emily know, I preach very rarely, a little bit more just now, but all the time I'm using every opportunity to encourage, train, feedback. So the trouble with the church plant is sometimes the primary leader does need to set the pace, and so does take quite a lot of the time. So it is a little bit. We did this podcast the other day, and I opened this up a little bit more, didn't we, Tom? But I'd start another one fundamentally if I've got that many leaders.
If you want to listen to the podcast Colin was referring to, it is up there on the broadcast website, so yeah, have a look if you're interested. Next question, it links into what you were saying about these preaching series that had been developed for you by a guy in his 40s. The question is just, what have you learned about leading people who are older than you?
Do you want to go?
No,
So I think one of the key factors to our development was congregations who allowed us to grow, and the biggest part of that was we had two couples join our church who, by our nature, they were kind of the eldest. So one was in their 30s, one in their 40s, and they knew, especially I didn't have a clue, and it was our first opportunity. And they bought in anyway and gave us a lot of grace. So we've actually found it was probably the older people in the congregation that were easier to lead on one level because they had bought into something. I think that's actually really key if you want to bring through leaders. The congregation needs to know that the culture is that we give people a go as well. But after a time, that only washes when you're brand new, and after a time, they want to see some growth in you as well. And I think it's probably just striving for what I think that the Bible would kind of be looking for as well, which is kind of just integrity and competency. And if you're getting those three spot on, then people don't have an awful lot to complain about. There can be kind of a chemistry thing of people you just don't get each other. But if you've got spiritual integrity and people can see you're working incredibly hard at what you do, and you're handling yourself all right, then I think that goes a long way with someone, no matter what their age really is.
Cool, thank you. Next one we'll go for then is about the time management thing, but it's particularly from the angle of the church, and it's just asking you to comment on the difference in church life in term times and in holidays and when all the students are away, and how do you balance the church timetable? What do you do differently at each point of the year?
what do we do? So
Talk about summer.
probably, yeah, in the summer, so when it's kind of quieter in one sense, although it's busier in another sense because we're down on servers, so actually everyone has to serve a lot harder through the summer. But that's kind of when we do most of our planning and kind of all the prep for the next term, if not probably the whole year. So that when we come to September, the idea is that we don't really have to kind of think about anything or plan anything, and that's kind of a heavy pastoral season when we probably spend kind of September to December when all the new students are coming in, just kind of meeting people and pastoring, and that's normally when everybody has the most issues. And then
January, and then your exams.
Yeah.
Um,
And then come Easter again, it's quiet and.
So
still
I think so we've not quite nailed our summers. We've done it differently kind of every year. Sometimes we shut down for a month. This year we shut down our evening congregation and kept our morning congregation going all the way through an attempt to double up, a bit of resource. But the morning family stays, so you still need all your kids' workers at least, which you're trying to put on. We lose about 2/3 of our people. But yeah, you just crack on in. So I usually do more playing in the bands and maybe kids work than I do preaching in the summer. But that's where it's kind of important to have, and you have to be deliberate in who you've brought through. So for different roles, so we kind of have a priority for us to have people who have jobs who can preach, because then in the summer they can do a lot of that, because most of our musicians are actually students. So then I'll be more of a musician in the summer. Yeah. But it's a massive contrast.
So on a couple of your answers, you've talked about developing people to preach. One of the questions is about that, and it's just asking, what is your strategy for developing preachers if you are going through 5 new preachers a year? So how do you actually go about doing that?
Okay, a few things in the mix. One, we centralise preaching training as a church, so we have a course run by Tom O'Toole and Andy Brownie, one of our other elders, that we just chuck as many people on as possible, and just plug it as this is helpful for your communication in general, and if you want to preach one day, it's a great thing to do. So we have a centralised training that probably, what was it, about 30 people were on just from across the church last year?
Yeah.
Maybe, yeah. So we have that in a mix as a training resource. How else do we do it? We, as a heavily student/graduate congregation, we've actually got quite a few people that are quite used to the discipline of assembling information and presenting it anyway. So we've actually got quite a rich ground for people to kind of pick from for preaching, and then you just look for people with integrity, people with real passion for the Word of God, and then for communicating the Word of God. Then you go on a journey with them, and the journey sometimes starts with them knowing it's happening, and sometimes they don't. So sometimes you just need to repeat to someone, we would like you to preach one day, your gifting would bless us. And that's usually the people that need a little bit of, they just need to hear it a few times. We had a girl this year who did her first preach for us in December. We'd earmarked her for all those characteristics I've mentioned, and I put her on a preaching rota for December, but didn't tell her. But the other people who can see the rota, so the elders all knew, and I told them to keep quiet. And we got her up taking communion every week, or for a few weeks. Then she started anchoring, hosting a few of our meetings, and when she was looking quite confident in that, I asked her to preach. But we'd already had this date earmarked and stuff. So the process is different for different people. It's quite a blessing that people leave us in a funny way, because it creates continued demand. And so I guess what we're aiming to do really is give people as many shots at it as possible before they go, or if they do stay, then we've actually got someone. So we're not looking at chucking on someone one time a year. For us, it's okay, can I get them on 3 or 4 times in their first year of preaching? Just let them learn by doing. If John Piper says you need 200 preachers, to have done 200 preachers before you found your preaching voice, then my kind of thought is, let's at least give these guys a chance of getting somewhere near it by the time they're 30, 35, rather than starting it then. But what makes it a lot easier for us is having 2 congregations, as Colin said. If you want to develop people, there's space, there's need. Sometimes too much need, and I end up doing a few too many in a row between the 2 than I planned, but it gives you more impetus to train more people up. So hopefully that's some form of help.
Great, I think it is, thank you. Colin, I think the next one's probably for you. The question is, how do you balance taking risks with people and giving them responsibility and preventing giving that responsibility too soon when it could lead to problems?
Okay, there's never a correct answer for this. So, because it's always a risk, but you can minimise that risk. So for me, I'm always there when I ask somebody to do it. So for Dave and Emily, Mary and myself, that's my wife, we've spent quite a lot of time in the congregation, sitting there, being there. So effectively, first of all, you are around. So you're giving responsibility, but you're there. So I think the closer you are, the bigger risk you can take. So that's, I think I'm always looking for people who are teachable and can take feedback. I don't give a lot of criticism, but I do give a lot of feedback. And so I'm looking for people who can handle that. So if people can handle that, then you can give them more. I think you don't know what people's breaking strain is or ability until they have a go. So as Dave said about preaching, our philosophy has always been you give them more than one, because the first one could either be brilliant or go pear-shaped, and it'll be nothing to do with how good the person is as a preacher. It's just one of those days, we all have a good day and a bad day. So for me, I'm always watching, always asking. So these are things to mitigate some of the downside. So, and I'm watching, are they under too much stress? I'm asking around. And sometimes some stress is good for you. The reality is pressure is not bad. It actually is bad when it actually gets to breaking point. So I think a lot of leaders overprotect people because they don't want them to be overpressurized. But actually, the reality is it's in those environments that you grow. And actually, a lot of people are stimulated. They want the challenge. And they rise to the challenge. On the other hand, you've just got to watch it. So I don't know if I'm answering your question. So it's the balance between giving people room to find where their limits are and being around enough not to let them get too stretched. So that's why I'm a little bit more organic, if I can use that word. You can have a training program, but actually it's all individual. And David Emily's capacity is different to someone else's capacity, and their ability to cope with life is different to others. So that's, for me, the biggest thing is actually being there, watching, talking, and bringing the appropriate kind of I want to say correction, but I don't mean correction. I mean adjustment is the word I'm looking for.
Thank you, Colin.
Can I just add something very quickly on the end of that?
Please.
And just probably what I think CCM does quite well is talk about its failures and stuff gone wrong. And we were brought into something in an atmosphere where a couple of church plants hadn't made it very far at all, and so I know it's just an atmosphere where kind of failure is kind of acknowledged and spoken about rather than hush hush and ashamed. It's just people have a go sometimes it works out, sometimes it doesn't, and communicating that I think took a lot of the pressure off of our backs when we were having a go.
Great, thanks, Dave. Let me just put one more question to you two, and then we'll move towards wrapping this up. Just about when times have been hard along the way, what is it that's kept you going through those times?
It's all about the flock. Especially in the early days, we didn't think anything more of our role aside from we were just serving the church as a need, and then when you've been doing it for 2 years or so, you suddenly start thinking, oh crumbs, maybe there's some decades in this potentially, and but I think our heart has always been the same. It's just we want to keep on loving people and making disciples of people, encouraging them to know more about Jesus, and when they do, that's incredible, and you see God at work. And even when you don't see that, just when you're aware of God's heart for them and kind of always trying to keep that perspective, you know, what does he think about this? Well, he loves this church family and he wants them to grow. So that's probably a perspective we've clung on to, through various tough times.
Great, thank you. Dan, Emily, have you got anything to add on that one? What's kept you going through the tougher times?
No, I think probably the same. Yeah, just kind of making sure that it's kind of still God's will, and if it is, then just cracking on, really.
Great. Well, thank you. Yeah, thanks so much. Thank you, everybody who's asked questions. Been some great questions this evening, so thank you for contributing them. Let me remind you, we're back in 2 weeks' time, so that's the 2nd of February. We've got Steve Tibbett with us. He'll be talking more about leadership development. So maybe any questions that occur to you once we go off the air tonight, save them up and put them to Steve, and he will hopefully have some good answers for us. More resources available on the broadcast website as well. We've got podcasts and blog articles. It's all around this topic this month. So just before we sign off, there'll probably be people listening to this who are in the position where they're leading something and they have young people kind of in their congregations or in their groups or whatever it may be who have the potential to lead. So Dave, Emily, any words that you'd want to say to those people as we're on the way off the air? Anything to leave them with?
So to a leader that has some younger people about giving opportunity, I'll just say head knowledge is useless until you've got a time to apply it, and if I'm competent enough today for Colin to keep me on, or whatever, it's because I've done lots and lots and lots of stuff, and some of it's been good, some of it's been bad, and I just think you need to be aiming to give someone as much opportunity as they can take. So whether that is one preach a year or one preach a month, or whether that is leading a community group and running something, or whatever, just seek to create as much opportunity, because it takes a long time. Or it could take a long time, or it could take a short time where you do a lot of stuff in that time. But yeah, so look to create lots of opportunity.
Yeah, and Colin, then I'm sure you'd echo what Dave said there. Would you want to add anything else as we finish this on the topic we've been talking about?
I just think my theology says this: there's enough leaders in the church, and I think as leaders it's our responsibility to find them, nurture them, give them space, and then instead of a lot of churches saying there isn't enough people to lead different things in our congregations, we'll just have a load of them, because I believe that's what God has provided.
Great, thank you everyone. It's been great having you guys on. It's been great seeing this journey kind of live in action over the last few years, and then hearing the story told tonight. So yeah, here's to many, many more leaders being raised up and brought through, and these stories being multiplied in our churches. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you.